Barrett, Communications Manager for Planning and Investment at UDOT.
Christopher Shaw at UDOT, Zero Fatalities, St. Brad's Utah Program Manager.
Jay Aguilar, Planning at UDOT.
Josh Van Jura, Trails and Transit Group.
Andrea Olson, UDOT Planning. Julie Buren, Wasatch Front Regional Council Long Range Planning.
Miranda Jones Cox, WFRC Government Affairs.
Jeff Gilbert with the Cash MPO.
Todd Mueller with the Cash MPO and Cash Valley Transit.
UGA Government Relations. Joe Bishop.
Will you be EOE with the UTA board office?
Nicole Bordeaux, Chief Planning and Engagement Officer to UTA.
Alex Bain, UTA Planning.
Yes, thank you everybody for being here, and we do have an agenda in front of us.
Some folks online.
Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. Thank you. That's your job is to keep track of me. So let's go to the folks online. Alex?
Oh, that's me. I'm just
Oh.
online because I.
You are online, yes. Okay, is there any, I see Bill Wright. I didn't see Bill Wright in the off in the.
Bill Wright, Mayor, please.
Okay. Who else is online? Don't, Mayor Ramsey?
Yes, Don Ramsey with South Jordan City and Wasatch Front Regional Council.
Carla?
Through the Merrill, Alpine City.
Okay. Tyler, you didn't introduce yourself. Where are you? Running around doing the technology. Okay. Is there anyone else online? Peter?
Brandon.
Oh, Brandon?
Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, this is Peter Hadley with Federal Transit Administration Region 8 office.
Thank you for being. Anyone who hasn't introduced themselves? Okay. Okay, so we're going to do the one piece of formal business that we have. We do have minutes in front of us. Is there discussion or a motion to approve the minutes? Second, Carlton. Any discussion to the motion to approve the minutes? Seeing none, place the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion, minutes have been approved. Thank you very much. So we have put together an agenda of topics, and what I will challenge anyone is if there are things you would like to hear about, talk about, that questions on, bring them up, and let's we can talk about those at any time. Are there any announcements anyone would like to? I waited until you had a bite of food.
Thank you, Carlos. I'll take 1 minute to share with everybody that we are excited to be the host for Olympics comments. We're to be the host for the annual conference of the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, or AMPO. AMPO is one of the two associations of MPOs in the nation, and they are doing their national conference here.
Does somebody have their computer?
Sorry, that was me. I
Oh,
apologize.
Thank you, Beth, for amplifying my words. They are having their annual conference this year in Salt Lake City, in Utah, September 24th through 27th. So MPOs from around the country are going to be coming. We would love to have people register for the entire conference if you're interested. Also, we work as the host MPO, which we're doing in partnership with our other MPOs here. We have worked with AMPO that they are giving us a, for our special friends and partners, one day comp for the conference. So if you're interested in coming for 1 day, you can for free. You can also register for the whole conference. I'll also note that they're doing having a keynote speaker, the FHWA administrator, Caitlin Bott. So that would be important and relevant to us. I want to thank Carlos for talking to the administrator about this. Thank you. It's going to be great. More information to come.
questions for Andrew? Yeah, I'll tell you,
Oh, no, not for Andrew.
Oh, okay.
Just,
Announcement. Yeah, so I'll tell you, if you can only attend a part of it, Shailen is a hoot. He's, I've known him for probably 30 years. He was the director of the Rhode Island, like Lewis, of Colorado DOT. He was the director of the Delaware DOT and deputy director of Kentucky. And he claims to be the funniest man in transportation. Very bright and always interesting. So if you can attend Shailen's conversation, that would be good, and it would help Ivan get some ground points here.
There you go. Thanks, Adam.
Two quick ones. So first of all, we want to thank all those who came and as well as participated in our Transit Academy last May or last month, and including some of the neighboring transit agencies. And we had a lot of good discussion. That was helpful. And then the second piece is added. UTA received its letter of no prejudice from Mid-Valley Express, our BRT system, going from Murray Central to West Valley. And all that isn't the full funding grant agreement that we all want and hope and quickly or soon anticipate, but it does let us move forward with substantial construction, commence with additional construction, taking that risk on ourselves if that grant agreement doesn't come, but at least we're in alignment.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Thank you, Colin. Anyone else like to? So we're, and it's back rowers, you guys can participate too if you'd like. So we're in the Bill Hurley conference room. Everyone here knows probably Bill Hurley, right? Does anyone know Bill Hurley? Really? Commissioner? Yeah, he was the director at UDOT when I first started. So that will be next week. That will have been 38 years ago. And this obviously Region 2 was locally covered. At that time, it was called District 2. This building didn't exist. This is a new building that we added on the facility in the early 90s. So we named it after that past DOT director. So, a little history. Region 2, this is basically where the design, the construction, maintenance of all the state projects, and actually even the local government jobs are administered out of here for Tooele, Salt Lake counties, and Summit counties. So the three counties are managed out of this office. Robert Stewart's the region director. And their offices are in these really old buildings still over here, so they haven't really had any improvement in the building. So we do have an agenda, and barring anyone wanting to ask any questions on any subjects, we're going to jump into that. And Nicole, are you going to take the lead on this here? Do you want to come up to the table? And
I will.
I think
I'm going to bring Alex
Al's
up
going to
first,
run slides.
and then
Yes.
trustee Carlson, Christensen will follow up.
Yeah.
Correct?
I was told that maybe I should comment on that, but
If
I won't be offended. But
I think it's a positive method.
No, it is.
And so that's
there is
why-
a component
that's
there
why
that
we-
I think would be a shared goal by everyone. So I'll do it when they're done.
Allison, let's see. Allison,
Perfect.
what do you see?
I don't need a mic, so I'm just gonna do a brief introduction while Alex, I just realized I've known Alex for probably 4 years now, and I've been pronouncing his last name incorrectly, as my employee, but that, if you know me, that doesn't surprise anybody. Again, I'm Nicole Bordeaux. I'm over Chief Planning Engagement at UTA. Today, we are excited to talk about our long-range transit plan. And this has been something we have been working on at UTA for several years. It got a little delayed with the pandemic, but this is very exciting for us and exciting for our customers and our stakeholders that we serve. As you all know, we work really closely with our MPOs on our regional transportation plan and with all our stakeholders on the unified plan. But one of the things UTA didn't have is our long range plan that shows local services and resources that we needed to actually implement the service that our customers need. And so having this long range plan that Alex is going to go over really helps us with implementation of a long range vision that we get to lay out from our board down into implementation that we'll talk about. So after Alex goes over kind of that vision of 2050, we also have a 5-year service plan. And right now that is being developed and updated. We've had it for 3 years. It is a 5-year plan that is updated every 2 years. And that is actually the implementation of this long range plan. And we'll be presenting that to the board as a discussion item on June 12th. This is really where the rubber hits the road. This is where you see what our resources are, what corridors we're looking at to put in service, what the frequencies are, what frequencies, scheduling, things like that. And we'll be looking at phasing at the end of the year. One of the exciting pieces of all of this is really working with our stakeholders and getting our feedback, your feedback of what you're doing with development in your communities, understanding land use and how that affects transit in your community. And I don't, one of the things I was going to refer to Trustee Christensen, who when we first came on, he worked with some of the industrial areas talking with my service planner about what land use looks like in industrial areas so that you can transit there. We developed a little sheet. And then Trustee Goldberg, if you want to say anything about like what the meetings we've been doing with our constituents up north about cities and their planners about how they can give us information that we can put into these plans. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I just had something really quickly. I don't want to stop your flow.
That's okay.
But,
Alex is getting settled.
So we have met with Ogden, Laser, and specifically, just for context, they currently have a trolley system within our service area that they pay for portion of the maintenance on that vehicle. And what we have found is that we can create a better dynamic and greater connectivity as we look at vehicles that actually can handle what is now their riders. So for these, so I'll talk about Farmington, we went to Farmington City this morning. And really the focus is to try to figure out how land use and road use and working with those stakeholders can really help, not just for today's short range, what I call short range plan in the 5-year category that gets updated every 2 years, but also the long range as well. So that can address the growth pieces. And I think it's really critical to understand those dynamics as you are looking at how we can provide that overlay of service. That's all I wanted to say. I heard a lot more, but at the end, just think coordinating land use and zoning. And so for instance, orientation and how buildings are on properties. It's not just the TOD acreage that we work on, it's adjacent to that. How do you get to that TOD? So that's it. Thanks.
So before go ahead.
The other piece that is definitely an ongoing, and I know Mayor Burton and I had this conversation. I met a month or so ago with the Utah Inland Port Authority and others, and you know we've talked about our challenge in hiring operators, although we've made some great progress. But I don't believe there's a major employer in the state of Utah who's trying to figure out how they can access a larger employee base. And that incremental barrier, if you will, to transportation is a lot of those households maybe only have one vehicle. And so then it becomes a value choice and even some discretion about where they work based on what transportation they actually have. And I would love to say that suddenly that goes away and there are 10 kids in every family. But I think if you look what the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute, who does the official stats for the state, are looking at, that scenario is not, unless we just hit horrible economic times, not likely to change anytime soon. the challenge in some of these like industrial areas is that the shift nature of that work doesn't lend itself to a traditional type of transportation. And so, you know, how could other things like van tools or employee shuttles to transfer points, you know, work, and sort of taking advantage of what's there, what is in our long range plan, without having it be an all or nothing kind of scenario. And so maybe thinking more creatively in the long term. And the nice thing about this plan, and I'll let Alex actually get into it, is that, you know, our plan is updated every 4 years. And so those are conversations, like this is the first stab at it, but there are conversations still to be had. And I think those conversations need to take place because it's going to be challenging for most employers to meet that commitment long term.
So what I will tell you, you'll see in this plan, to kind of reiterate what the trustee said, is you're going to see us looking at innovative modes and ways to meet the market. You're going to see ways to meet growth in frequency and capture the ridership. You're going to see us meet ways to give more accessible access, meaning to, as we expand and grow in areas that have grown out, like areas at Eagle Mountain, areas that are harder to reach with transit. You're going to see us looking at innovative ways to get to that market. So Alex will talk about how we're looking at that, ways of we're looking at our resources, how we're using those resources that are limited. And I will turn the time over to him and let us know if you have any questions. And again, in June, look out, we'll be sending information about our 5-year plan, which is the implementation of the 5 years of our one-way plan. Alex?
Yes. So thanks, Nicole and trustees, for teeing this up. Yes, we are very excited to have our first long-range plan looking at the 2050 that looks across the agency. I'm going to kind of briefly go through a few slides here to just give folks an overview of what we've been doing. There's a lot of folks in the room who have seen some version of this presentation before, so I may move quickly through some of those. If anyone has questions, please feel free to ask. You know, one of the things was, what is the plan and what was the need for the plan? And it's really thinking about the needs, looking out 30 years, looking out to 2050 of what the needs of the communities are. And as was articulated before, we also need to think about not just project needs, which our NPO partners, WFRC and MAG, have done an outstanding job of thinking about the big capital projects, but we have a lot of places in our region that may need transit, but may not be ready for a fixed skyway rail system or something like that by 2050, but they may need something. And there's a lot of looking at where service and when service operates, which is a function of our operations, less than it is about capital improvements. And so,
Alex,
yes,
just
go ahead.
You just said something I just want to emphasize to make sure it's clear to everybody. And the trustees and Nicole said this also. The UTA long range transit plan is consistent with Utah's unified transportation plan and the regional transportation plans that are adopted and talked about a lot here. Those plans cover mainly regionally significant capital projects. They do not identify in detail neighborhood bus service, local service. UTA does that work. And as I understand it, has looked more just for, historically, has only looked a few years in that realm. It has not done planning out for many years when it comes to that more local service.
Exactly.
So this fills, really importantly, fills that need to complement what's in Utah's unified transportation plan. So regionally significant capital projects and service being looked at over a longer period of time. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's exactly correct, Andrew.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Part of that piece is, even in 2050, right, there will not be rail on every corridor and to every place, and that bus network really feeds the rail system and our whole network across the waterfront. We do also include vision items beyond the plan. this just talks about the schedule. We recently was adopted by our Board of Trustees in March of 2024. The first version, the plan vision development, I want to talk about a little bit. We have goals that we established based on UTA strategic plan goals. We looked at existing work that MAG, WFRC, UDOT, and UTA have been doing and looked at gaps in the system. We got public input and put together a prioritized list of projects. As I mentioned, it's tied to our strategic plan goals in terms of what these projects would potentially do for ridership, economic return, et cetera. This has a lot of information on it, but is a important piece of what we're doing with this plan is helping our partners and the public understand our whole range of services that we offer. And the first three on the left are generally understood by everybody. There's a rail components. The next two they're a little bit fuzzy sometimes. They're considered by FDA sometimes to be either a fixed skyway BRT or a corridor-based BRT. So that's kind of more enhanced bus, and one has a higher level investment or lower level. We also have our frequent bus service that may not have a capital component in the corridor of beyond bus stops. And then we have local bus, a new regional limited stop bus, and what we're calling innovative mobility solutions, which exists in our region today as UTA's on-demand service, which operates in Southwest Salt Lake County, Tooele County, South Davis County, and the west side of Salt Lake City. But these solutions can include a whole range of other things.
Zones, Alex,
Yes,
sorry.
yes. The zones can include a range of other things. That can include a variety of first, last mile connections between transit and destinations. We did significant public outreach as part of the plan. We heard a lot about frequency, which I believe our board chair will be talking about the legislative audit, and that's reflected in the legislative audit that the realization that folks need frequency and they need to be able to not have to plan their day around when they use transit for it to be effective. We heard a lot about front runner improvements and extensions, new routes and new places. We also had an online map where we collected about 1,600 unique responses about different proposed projects or service types. We have 4 main strategies in the plan, which I won't spend a lot of time on, but it's really maintaining our system, which is, and everyone in transportation understands this is the part that people are less excited about, but it's so critical. In the same way that no one will go to a ribbon cutting for rail replacement, you know, it needs to happen to keep our system running. We're doing better than a lot of places in the country.
Yeah, I got you.
Well, then maybe with some of our
Start doing
state
that.
repair projects, we'll have.
Start doing that.
ribbon
Marketing, I'll let Heather know.
Yes.
Open on time, well.
Yes. But there's a whole slew of things in here, maintaining our fleet, thinking about corridors for the future. Workforce has been key. As I mentioned in the previous slide, expanding frequent transit is so critical to the success, and we're looking at expanding across all of our modes, as well as additional Saturday and Sunday service, making enhancements to the system to make it easier to use. And you can't have a conversation about Utah without talking about growth. So we're looking at serving new growing across the Wasatch Front. So this just talks about our vision network, which includes a number of things that might require additional funding. There's a lot of detail here. I will say on each of these slides, there's a link to our long range plan where you can get into all the details and see an interactive map. We also have the constrained plan, which highlights include new local routes in high growth areas, more high frequency service, more service on Sunday, front runner extensions and frequency improvements, new tracks service, and new places with these innovative mobility zones. We had a number of other efforts that were going on at the same time that we didn't include in this plan because they were happening, but we wanted to acknowledge them. No plan can ever capture everything, and it's always a moving target. And a big piece here is the next steps that are coming up. A lot of this plan has been prioritizing what we want to focus on in the next 10 years. And of course, that's been heightened with the potential announcement of our Olympic host in Utah for the 2034 Olympics. So our 10-year capital plan, which is underway right now, is doing further prioritization of what we want to focus on first. This has become part of our long-range planning program. We are including this in the regional planning process, and we've already begun working with WFRC and MAG to think about what we're going to be talking about over the next 4 years as we're talking to stakeholders and the public about what they think should be changed or added. We're working on updates to financial assumptions. And the next plan will align with the next updates to the MPO's regional transportation plans. And with that, if anyone has questions, happy to take them. Yes.
Can you help me understand the difference between a rapid bus, an enhanced bus, and a standard bus?
I sure can. So and I'll go back to that slide quickly. And this is kind of we didn't finish everything here. There's ongoing work with our communications team on clarifying on this. Now the rapid bus and enhanced bus are generally all under the category of some sort of corridor enhancement. The rapid bus would be a higher level. That would be more like a UDOT type system where there's substantial dedicated lane and stations. The enhanced bus might be more like our Davis Salt Lake City project that's underway right now, where it's less likely to have some of the investment or have enhanced amenities, better stations, and things to help the bus run faster, but it's a lower level of investment. And so, and then we just really have frequent bus, which I think is something that we're excited to see because there are places where we think that it's worth testing, just having the bus come more often and see what that does before we make a major multi-million-dollar investment in the corridor. Let's see what frequency does for the route. And that gives us more flexibility. If it's not working or if road changes, if it's bus, we have more flexibility. And one of the things that's a little hard to see with all that's going on in this graphic, like the farther you get to the left, the more permanent and inflexible it is. And the farther you get to the right, the more it can change. And so we need to strike the balance between having things that we can modify as we need to, but then also have other services where we're like, okay, we know this is a high growth area. It's not going to change. We want people to be able to say, this service is not going to change next year. Your enhanced bus or rapid bus has a level of permanence that's not likely to go away. And then obviously once we put rail on the ground, that's not likely to change it. Did that help?
So Alex?
I was just gonna say, would you explain what the concept of a limited stop might be or entail, or
Sure.
what concept we're exploring?
Well, one thing that is, as we iterate over time, we're changing transportation needs, is we had a lot of service that was express-based, which was suburban, peak direction, only ran during rush hour to bring 9 to 5 commuters to a CBD or job center in the morning and then back in the evening. And that's kind of an old paradigm. A lot of folks don't work 9 to 5. A lot of people don't work in the CBD, Central Business District. And so we know, certainly in our region, we're a very polycentric region where with Lehigh, Saratoga Springs, for example, you have people coming out and heading south. You have people going north. So you can't really have an express bus that goes to one location. But we do also cover a very large area. So we have folks in Tooele, we have folks up in Brigham City. And so what this does, this limited stop service is about covering large portions of our geography, but it would run both directions all day. So it would allow people who work shift work or one challenge with express bus is people are worried, oh, if I have to stay late, I can't take the express bus because it only runs between 5 and 6, right? So this would run from early morning to late at night, both directions. But because it covers long distances, it would have a wider distance between stops to help it move faster.
Probably a park and ride type of.
Yes, it could be a park and ride, yes. A park and ride or dense nodes along there.
Let's expand on that point. In the northwest part of Utah County, we've got Eagle Mountain, Federal Springs, and Lehigh. We do have a regional system that they can tie into. And we've been talking with UDOT, and they've been open to this concept of having a shoulder that will give us that opportunity to get a bus through that congested traffic. And we have the park and rides going in those two areas, Eagle Mountain, Federal Springs, that will allow us to move people and provide transit as an opportunity to get into the regional system as well. So that's a critical piece. UDOT's through the transportation fund, they've invested $1.4 billion to really address those issues in that sector of the state. And in conjunction with that, there's a close association with UTA as they increase those corridors, as they define what road systems are going to go in there. They're going to keep top of mind that transit needs to be an element of that and preserve that corridor in such a way that we can provide all the systems that could be available that best serve that from a transit perspective. So
Can I just add on that? I think this is one of those innovative things we're looking at. This is because of the way we've developed. So it's not just, it is Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, it's Tooele. Carlos, we talked about Tooele and how you're making some infrastructure there. Again, a limited stop, growing into transit. That's another area we're looking at. There's some places that have already been developed. I won't say yet because I haven't talked to you or Josh about it, but we have several other areas like that where these opportunities may be there for us to work together. And I think I just want to say how much I appreciate that, because I think if you have UDOT, if you have the DOT and the transit agency working together, you really can make it a change for the community, because it's not just about roads and it's not just about transit. We have to really be in sync about a transportation system. So it's active transportation, it's roads, and it's transit to get people around. It's mobility. It's not just one or the other.
Moving people and the things that people need.
Yeah.
Commissioner, before we go to you, we have had two folks come in, Harold and Commissioner Stevens. Do you want to introduce yourselves, please?
Are we starting here? I'm sure. Kathleen Alder, I'm Mayor of Providence, Chair of the Cache County Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I wanted to say when I came, thank you for fixing the bridges to the airport.
Yes.
I mentioned that, and right after that, you did it. So I told the rest of my city, they should thank me.
It was in work.
Don't tell me that.
It takes credit.
It was you.
It's things don't happen that fast. We still have a bunch more to go, and Becky is part of our discussion here is going to talk about the bridge formula program that was dealing with
That's great.
IIJA.
Yes, I'm Bob Stevenson. I'm Davis County Commissioner, and I was with Beth Holbrook this morning at a meeting. She said, I'll see you at UTA. So I rode the train to UTA. And then I had to jog over. Andrew, you can ride that over.
So it's best for all of the commissioner.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a picture of all of this. It seems to me like this plan, it's a good plan. However, the plan goes for 37 years or 27 years. And in this time frame, in 27 years, as fast as advances are happening, there's still be more of the antiquated types of transportation. Are we looking into the future of transportation? Something that is not going to need as many roads. Maybe we need corridor preservation on the air. And, because when I first took office 3 years ago, there had been some meetings I had that talked about transporters. And I mean, I know of people that are working on those transporters, and I'm just wondering why that is not in this plan.
But I'll give you the short answer, and that is, we're not statutorily given the air piece. I think that would probably be that's UDOT, and then overall planning would be the MPO, prospective MPO. But our focus is primarily transit. I guess we could get into the transit area.
We can point out right before COVID, together ETA, we got one of the autonomous shuttles. And for a full year, we moved it all over the state to give people an opportunity to ride an autonomous shuttle. So we are, I think, collectively looking and trying to anticipate the future. But I think that's an important reason why that long range plan, we redo it every 4 years. And so everything's going to keep changing. And it's important that, we have that plan, we work towards the plan. And those first, 4 years, 5 years, what Alice was talking about, that's pretty certain. We know what we're going to do there. But that next 27 years, we need to be flexible.
I just didn't see that as a portion of your longer range plan, as to maybe innovation. Because without innovation, we're gonna die.
Well, so two things on that is, one is, as was mentioned, right, like we're updating, so the plan includes technology that exists today, right? So that's where we're drawing lines and saying, okay, we know that we could do this. We do have the innovative mobility zones that are open to a range of options, including autonomous vehicles and other things that we're not sure what they are. We just identify zones where we realize that there's a need. But some of this is about capacity and geography, right? So whether these vehicles are autonomously piloted or have an operator, some of it's about the capacity and how many people you can move, because those fundamentals don't change even with technology. In the future, if you have a dense urban center, if you have thousands of people driving autonomous cars, that's still congestion versus a larger vehicle carrying lots of people. So we are keeping open the options, but the plan includes technology that we realize is proven today. That makes sense.
And I understand that. I know that there's a huge traffic jam in Sardine Canyon. Well, that's right now. Okay, there's traffic all the time. There's traffic on Traffic Loop Road in Morris County. There's traffic at all these different places coming up from the Ogden, from the Davis Weaver side. I'm looking at the future. I'm not looking at today, because today we're not ready for it, nor do we need it. But in the future, I know we're going to need it, because I was around 50 years ago and I know or more. And I know what it was like then when we had horses to go up and down the roads. Now we can't. So all I'm saying is we need to, in this long range plan, look at the future and not just today and the next 5 years.
As Councilwoman Allison, just join us. You want to introduce yourself, and then we'll come up.
So Councilmember Allison Straub from San Diego representing WS.
Thank you.
I'm gonna give my age up, but we're getting closer to the Jetsons.
Yes.
There's no good old further than getting older.
It probably happened. I don't think my lifetime. We're getting there.
I think we announced something collectively, the state of Utah, with private industry last Thursday.
Last week.
Yeah, last week. We made the announcement with, in terms of a coalition called 47G, and looking at unmanned aerial aircraft. We've set a goal as a partnership that by 2034, that magic date, we're going to probably hear that a lot. We're going to be leading the world
Yes.
in helping people move around like the Jetsons did. And,
That's why I'm wondering why it's not in.
well, because our plan has to be specific. It has federal requirements around how it needs to be put together and the financial assumptions, but be comfort in the fact that all these agencies in the state and the country are very focused right now on where the future's going. I'm going to participate next Thursday on a White House panel on looking at how we incorporate AI into transportation. How we help, AI helps transportation make better decisions, save more lives, those types of things. Jory, do you want to say something?
Commissioner, I'd add that the plan that UTA is presenting is transit. The MPOs and the unified plan are looking at external forces and policies. We have a subcommittee that's looking at that. In the last planning horizon, we looked at 22 different policies that were from road usage charges to signal priority for transit, to connected and autonomous vehicles, to drones, their mobility. We're going to continue to look at that this next go around as a bigger picture and on a statewide level to do some coordination. So it's not off the table, but as Carlos may mention, there are some federal requirements and we have to be careful not to get too far ahead of ourselves and make assumptions, because if the plans from the 50s when flying cars were brought up, if we had planned everything for that scenario, we'd be in a situation right now where we wouldn't have the flying cars. So we have to just be, we keep our eye on it, but we can't get too far ahead.
Okay, as long as it's in the.
Oh, yeah.
Where the thoughts.
Yeah, we're keeping our eye on it. And if there's other things that are popping
I'm
up,
hoping I'm just not the only one.
right.
I grew up in just.
In the fifties, we had boat cars.
Yes.
In the sixties, we had jets.
Said you understand?
Yes.
Was this a women only?
Unpeopled, sorry there. Thank you very much.
I tried to resist, but
Hey, Alex, do you mind explaining a little bit about, or expanding on how the growth areas are defined? Is it just with transit-oriented development, or is it kind of a broader formula that you guys are utilizing in your plan?
Yeah, so that is working closely with our MPO partners, with WFRC and MAG and MC Gardner Institute on looking at where growth is expected, where centers are planned. And once again, that's also speaks to a need for updating the plan on a regular basis, because those things change over time, or development that you think was going to happen suddenly doesn't, economy goes up or down. But yes, we do a lot of coordination with our MPO partners and others on collecting data on what we think will happen in the future in terms of growth. And certainly, centered development and transit-oriented development is a big element when we think about where we want to have transit, and things like AB 462 and pulling development to where we already have investment is a great thing that's happening. And so all those things about land use really into the technology piece, right? Whatever the technology is, you still need to have appropriate land use to go with your transportation. So we do a lot of work.
And then the 4 strategies, are those all considered equal, or are they prioritized? Sure.
They are all, there isn't really a prioritization. They're just the key things in the plan.
Okay.
They're all the pieces that need to come together for this to work.
If you guys plan to put like a total dollar amount to each of them to kind of reflect, because I mean, I'm not going to say they may be equal, but the investment may not be equal.
Right. That's part of the financial modeling that we have done with WFRC and MAG, and that includes both the project costs, operation and maintenance costs, and all the associated, right? So once you get X number of additional buses, you need a new facility. So there's a lot of complicated modeling that goes behind that. So
well, the other thing I would say is that we do at UTA do a 5-year both capital and financial model plan, and that does determine wouldn't say it determines, it helps guide us in that longer term strategy. So in the capital plan, some years may have a greater load on maintaining the system as opposed to expanding it. Last year, about half of our capital budget went to actually maintaining the system. It's a lot, a good chunk of it is 20 years or 15 to 20 years. And it's just kind of come to that point where it's requiring that fix. But, it's there and available. And I would say there are some limits to it in the sense of, but there's also some opportunities on the horizon that could certainly broaden or open those opportunities up. And certainly recent funding by the state legislature for transit helps in that context.
I was just gonna tell people that have other questions too. I know we have a big agenda, but on the website, you go to Write UTA LRTP, and you can also look at the project sheets where there's an evaluation where you can look at how we've looked at it for our federal funding, opportunity for access, how it's rated for ridership. To your point about, so our first phases of projects that are in the RTP, you can see how we've looked at that as far as more of evaluation versus a prioritization. And then our 10-year capital plan, we will be looking at that along with how we can work with UDOT. And so how we could prioritize to go into the 10-year unconstrained, and then go into, as Carlton said, the 5-year service plan and the 5-year capital plan. So that's how we'll be prioritizing through the plan. So you'll see that. But I would just welcome you to go to that and look at those project sheets, and you can see how some of these projects do better: ridership, federal access, community input, and then that way you can see how they're going into our 10-year and then being presented to the board for financial funding and the 5-year service plan. And then if you have questions, please feel free to contact myself or Alex about the next steps, or our trustees, of course.
Just a real quick comment. I think you hit on it, Commissioner. The corridor preservation is critical because that gives us the opportunity to innovate and to do things within that corridor. And I know Carlos and I, we've talked about this, and he's probably tired of me saying this, but we've got to preserve a corridor so we have the option to do what we need to do. And if you think back with this valley, this greater Salt Lake Valley, who came in here and what was their plan? Broad streets, grid system, so you can move north, south, east, and west. And that system's still true today. And part of our problems is we kind of left that. So
nobody else had that vision and pushed it forward.
So we've got to maintain the ability with that corridor preservation. And it just isn't a road option. It's a transit, walking, trail system. So anyway, you were right on.
I'll just add another word to your description, and that is connectivity.
Yes.
Yes. We have gotten into this thing where we think everybody has to have their little space.
Yeah.
And we're not connected. And, I hate it when we do neighborhoods where I want to go to my neighbor in my backyard and I've got to go out a mile around to get there. I can't even climb over the wall that's there. I've got to get in my car and go.
Have you tried?
We've got to
That's where leadership is.
only at night where nobody can see.
Yeah, that's where leadership is. We have to make sure as leaders, the ones that are moving this forward, that we maintain that ability to connect.
Yeah, connectivity, but I don't hear that very often in these meetings that I sit in. We talk about plans and helicopters and all those kind of things, but connectivity is so important for us to maintain so many things. And it is, we've got to get ourselves so that we're back together rather than in our separate places. Anyway, connectivity is an important word.
We agree 100%.
I like that, and I just wanted to add on to that because I do think that is one of the critical components to it. And it's kind of like what we're talking about when we say, you have a development of X amount of acreage and you develop that. But if you're not thinking about how to connect through that development,
right,
then you're missing the boat.
Right.
And to me, that is how you become truly transit ready if you're not already having existing transit. And as we get more constrained due to growth along the Wasatch Front, certainly that is a huge challenge for us. We have to be thinking about building orientation, home orientation. Developers used to do that whole fence around the development, right? So how do you connect into that? And that is, I think, one of the key things. Some of the great point.
You have to go in and then come back out and say where you went in.
It takes you 20 minutes to get to your neighbor behind you. Right.
Great conversation. I'm going to just try to bring this agenda item to a close with a final question for Alex, because I don't think it's appreciated. Because speaking of connections and system thinking, transit, when we talk transit, we get a lot of attention for front runner and light rail. They're cool. But Alex, just roughly, the bus system, I think, is probably the most important piece of the transit system.
Yes.
Do we know percentage wise?
That's a great point, Carlos. Before the pandemic, it was roughly even, and now there's more people moving across the Wasatch Front on a bus than there are on front runner or light rail. So that is such a critical component of the whole network. In order to get to those places that can't necessarily get every place by rail. The rail is the backbone of the system, but you need that bus network and a reliable bus network. And I will say, we talked about it a little bit earlier with the limited stop bus, also the enhanced bus that we talked about. We've been having a lot of conversations with Region 2 and Region 3. We're getting ready. I've got some folks down in Utah County right now looking at our State Street bus, and we're looking at things, and this goes to innovation, right? What can we do that can make the bus move quicker and be fairly inexpensive, and we can do it in the next couple of years? A lot of these big capital projects, when you start seeing them, folks who have been around and remember when people started talking about UDX or OGX or Davis Salt Lake, those have been in the works for 20 years sometimes. These are things that we're talking about. Let's do this in the next 5 years, right? So let's speed up these bus services and make it more competitive with driving your own vehicle using the existing roadway. And how can we do it cheaply? And how can we do it quick? So we're excited to see that.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
I'm going to take the prerogative of the chair, and because we have a hard stop for our presenter, I'm going to move up the bridge program overview. Becky Nix is joins us here. She runs, if a bridge gets hit in the middle of the night or a pothole happens in the middle of the night in a bridge, this is the person who goes out there to make sure it's safe. And so I'm glad that Becky were able to join us. I know this is a different subject, but I think it's an understanding of the program and how the Department of Transportation Commission has prioritized the funds for this program. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys letting me shift time a little bit. I'm kind of double booked, so I appreciate that. So I'm the bridge management engineer. I oversee all the in-service bridges. So any of the planning and programming, project prioritization, bridge emergency response, and all of our bridge inspections. So one thing I wanted to touch on real quickly is UDOT does the oversight of all of the biennial bridge inspections for all of the local owners. So every 2 years, we look at every bridge. In the next 6 to 9 months, each owner should be getting a summary of that, getting you an idea of what your conditions are, any critical issues, what work condition bridges you have, as well as work recommendations that we have for each of the local owners. In addition to that, we do also load rate all bridges within the state, looking for safe load carrying capacity. So a lot of local owners have recently gotten letters from me or calls from me as we've updated our program, reload rated. This is really a strong federal push as well to make sure that we have all the bridges posted that are should be load restricted, so that we're not putting public safety at risk. There's been a big push lately as well for posting for emergency vehicles. These are some of the bigger fire trucks. So some of you guys may have seen emergency vehicle load posting signs. These trucks are just configured a lot differently than standard truck. And so they affect the bridges a lot differently. And so we do have some signs out there on about 60 bridges statewide that are specific to those larger fire apparatus. We're trying to work with those fire agencies as well. So if you haven't seen those already, that is something coming in programmatically, things that we are working on. But the main thing that I wanted to touch on is our bridge formula program. This came out as part of the IIJA bill, giving every state bridge specific funding. And each state gets funding allocated based on the size of their inventory, the percent for, the percent care, giving each state a minimum of $45 million a year over each year for 5 years. Utah has a pretty small inventory. We also have a pretty good condition statewide. And so we are getting the $45 million a year. When we found out about this funding, we really wanted to strategize and see where we could make the most impact with this bridge specific funding. And there's a requirement that 15% of the funding goes to local government bridges that are off the federal aid system. But we recognize that there has not been good funding sources for local agency bridges. Joint Highway Committee gets about $2 million a year, which with today's prices, that'll maybe do one bridge. We also were taking some funds off the top of our state structures program. These bridges all competed against state-owned bridges, so it's really hard to put funding to a bridge that sees 150 cars a day versus an interstate bridge. So we were only doing 2 or 3 locally owned bridges a year with that program as well. So when the Bridge Formula program came out, we recognized that this was a really interesting opportunity for us to have an impact on the local system that we've never had the opportunity to do. And we looked at the overall 5-year program and tried to establish how many bridges we could replace with that and prioritize system-wide and looking at poor condition bridges, those with really hard load restrictions that limited access to community, and then those that were in low fare condition that were likely to drop to poor condition. As part of that, we identified 90 bridges statewide, and rather than only allocating the 15% to locally owned bridges, we identified 78 of those 90 that are locally owned bridges. So the majority of this program is going to local agencies, working with 41 different agencies. So statewide, we're having a pretty big impact all around. 38 of those bridges are in poor condition, so that really addresses all of our poor condition locally owned bridges. We have had about 5 or 6 of them that were in that low fare category that since this program started in 22 have dropped to poor condition. So I feel like we did a pretty good job of kind of having an idea of what that impact was and which ones were likely to be a concern in the near future and really address those proactively as they're dropping into poor condition. And 35 of those bridges are load restricted, with 22 of them total that are both load restricted and poor condition. So those are really some of our critical bridges. And we have created a dashboard that's available to really make this information as transparent as possible and let everyone know what's going on within the program. So within that dashboard, we have our general overview. And right now we're showing we have one bridge that has finished construction. That one is in Sevier County and full construction complete on it. That one's been in poor condition, and I've done a lot of spectral inspections on that bridge, keeping an eye on it. We also have 4 that are actively in construction, 2 in Sandy City, 1 in Uinta County, and 1 in Beaver County. So we've got 5 bridges actively in construction or complete. In addition, we also have 13 bridges that are getting ready to advertise within the next 3 or 4 months. So within the dashboards, we have some of our information about how we selected the bridges, kind of what was available, as well as some of the project constraints. With this, we are really trying to make sure that we're as impactful as possible and we can address as many bridges as possible. So we're delivering the program a little bit differently, where UDOT is managing the design and construction. We're also trying to bundle bridges together and make larger packages, make them more attractive to contractors. We're trying to standardize designs. And so as part of that, we do limit some of the betterments that are allowed as part of this program. We're really trying to look at what can we do to effectively meet the needs of the communities and address active transportation as part of it, but make sure that we're addressing as many bridges as possible. So we're not looking at capacity upgrades to some of those. On the dashboard, there is a map where you can go through and get information on each of the individual bridges within the program, as far as who the owner is, some information about location, when it was built, what the condition is. And so there's a lot of good information. And if you have questions of if your bridge, or if you have a bridge that's a concern to you, is on this program, you can come to the dashboard, and the map is a great way to find it because you can geographically locate it. I know bridges by structure numbers, but most people have no idea what the structure numbers even mean. So this is a really nice way to be able to find out if your bridges are on the program. And in addition, we have a detailed summary that goes through and lists out all of the bridges, what the status is, what the condition, and the owners. One thing that's really different with this program is looking at the funding classification. If the bridges are off the federal aid system, they are actually 100% federally funded, which means there's no local match, and it really makes it a great opportunity to be able to go into some of these smaller communities that have a lot less opportunity to be able to come up with those matches. And so we're able to really be impactful in some of those smaller communities as well. So this does indicate whether the bridges are on or off the federal aid system. If it's on the federal aid system, it is a 6.77% match, which is still pretty small in comparison, especially when some of these bridges are $4 to $5 million. It brings a lot of federal funding into these areas. Then there is also bridge details, where you can go and find specific bridges and get a little bit more information about the status and where it's at in the program. And then this last tab is those bridges that are going to be advertising soon. So within the next 4 months, we've got 9 projects going out. It's addressing 8 local owners and 13 bridges. One of those is our bridge that has been in poor condition for the longest time in the state, and it's been in poor condition since about 1986. And just has not had a good funding opportunity because it is so low volume. So this really, I'm excited about this program because it's something that we just haven't been able to do in the past. And we haven't been able to put this much dedicated funding into our local bridge system. So that is Bridge Formula Program in a nutshell. One other thing that I wanted to bring up is we have created a dashboard for our general bridge information as well. And within this dashboard, we have a lot of good information about the general condition and general information about our bridge system. So if you, I know I get a lot of data requests and a lot of questions about how many bridges there are in certain areas, what the conditions are, some of that. So this is available on the UDOT Structures website and provides information about how many bridges are in each county, looking at the bridge depth area per county, and also going in and giving overall condition data. So if you want to get an idea within your specific MPO, you can filter down to identify all the bridges within that area, what the conditions are. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that resource that's out there and available.
Okay, what's the oldest bridge in the state?
I believe it's 1907.
Yeah, there you go.
Is our oldest one. It's either 1907 or 1910.
It's more.
Is that a wooden
Yeah,
bridge?
right?
It's an Arches National Park.
Well, with the national parks, yeah. We do have the 2 tunnels going into Bryce Canyon that our bridge inspectors do maintain and inspect every year. The sandstone arch.
That's so proud of that answer.
Yeah, first of all, I'm excited the fact that you're packaging these and simplifying, because I can imagine a lot of those owners don't really have the wherewithal to do that. I just wonder what 1 or 2 things are you finding in the design that really minimize cost or make it more efficient to install the new bridge? So just, are there some aha moments, or are you finding that you go package these bridges?
Yeah, we are finding that a lot of them are very similar, typical sections, very similar spans, so we can standardize those details, which is really creating savings up front on the design, as well as creating standard details for our barriers and some of those other pieces that we can really pull in. We are looking at minimizing the spans on some of these, and we're also looking at context.
When you
will
say
be
that, does
shared.
everyone, when you minimize the span, how long?
The length of the bridge, yeah.
But make sure you bring the road in closer, maybe.
If that still meets the needs, then yeah, we've been trying to do that. Changing the type of bridge. So a lot of these are beam systems existing, and we've got to box culverts on quite a few of them. They're lower maintenance overall, which helps out with the owners, and they're lower construction costs up front. And one of the other things is we've really been trying to put the context of where that bridge is. We don't want to go out to full standard 10-foot shoulders if there's 2-foot shoulders for 50 miles on either side with no plans to ever expand. And so really trying to look at what the actual needs are and fit within those boundaries.
Can I ask a quick question about that? So when you're planning for these bridges, basically you're taking the 50 miles surrounding it each way, right? Are you also thinking about the transportation when you're looking at that, even if it varies on those outside of that bridge?
Yeah, what we've done is ask each of the local owners to identify if there is an active transportation plan to add multi-use paths, bike paths, any of that through that corridor. And if it's on an active plan, then we are providing for that.
Andrew?
Becky, just 2 points of emphasis of things that you mentioned in your really terrific and clear presentation. First, Utah got the minimum amount of federal money, in part because Utah has done a better job than most states in the country of maintaining its bridges in good condition. And that is a testament to the quality of the work that UDOT does and our contractors, and also to the dedication, significant resources that the state has put into infrastructure. So that doesn't happen accidentally. And maintaining our systems, be it roadway or transit, in a state of good repair. It's not the things that we get ribbon cuttings for, as we said, even though some of us would go, but it's just critically important. So just compliments you on that. The second thing is just make sure everybody heard what Becky said. There's a minimum in this program federally that 20%, 15% goes to locals. But UDOT made the decision to put, what did you say, 78?
78 of the 90 bridges, so it's
Or
roughly about
local. 80% of the money to local governments. This is particularly relevant here. And Councilmember Stroud and I were just noting, like, they're doing 2 bridges in Sandy City and saying, hey, Sandy, can we come in and update your bridges? And I imagine you said, yes, please.
Yes.
In a heartbeat. And
we just press conference with Senator Romney of one of their bridges.
We're there.
I remember you had Senator Romney under a bridge
He made me a little nervous.
There you go. But it's just that to note, when we talk to our peers around the country, the relationship is not always very good between local governments and the state DOT. But this is an example of the DOT saying we want to work with and we want to help our local governments using federal resources, Ivan, and then working collaboratively with the local government. So I just want to commend you on that approach, and thank you.
Any other?
I want to say thanks. In Morgan County, you've done 2 bridges. Appreciate
One
it.
of them took a while, huh?
Yeah, 2 years. Well, I can't help that.
It's done now.
Yeah, we had some controversies with Cougars.
Yes.
Adjacent to 2 UT tracks, so we were really limited
That was
with
a
the
tough-
constraints of that location.
And that was when we had the highest river.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that was one that actually was taken out of the UDOT structures program and identified early. And so this bridge formula program helps us to address way more of those than we were at that time.
So I'm curious, how old was that bridge? I don't want to give my age. It was there since I've been.
I think that was around
25 years.
50s.
Thank you.
I think it was in the 50s or 60s. So I try really hard to memorize all 3,000 bridges in inventory, but unfortunately don't have all the
Come on,
facts.
Becky.
I tried.
You'd be amazed when you look at a bridge, the data fields, the amount of data that they are required and that they collect to do the analysis. Because at every bridge, they have to do an analysis on to be able to determine what loads can carry. Huge effort.
I will make one quick shameless plug. Utah is very lucky to be able to have a unique opportunity to host the National Bridge Preservation Partnership in September, on September 9th through 13th. This happens about every 5 years that we hold a national conference, and with having it here locally, we're definitely encouraging local owners, especially those with large bridge inventories, to attend. This is a great opportunity to learn some of those bridge preservation strategies to really extend the life and make sure we're maintaining them and keeping them in a state of good repair. So just wanted to
Becky,
plug
could you
that as
share
well.
that with us, and if we can push that out to our members as well, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have 3 questions, if I may. Separate questions. The first one is, you mentioned in some of the bridges, we had emergency vehicles. Is that any restricted then to use that bridge?
The weight that they're restricted to carry across.
So
is-
they know that ahead of time and they don't have to go there and find out.
Yeah, we're working on definitely getting more coordination out so that they know. They are posted there on the bridges, and then we are working right now to get it part of UDOT traffic app as well, that we're listing out all of the load restricted bridges for emergency vehicles and standard, as well as our vertical clearance, to try and get that information out early.
Second question I have is, do you do new bridges as well or just existing?
We inspect and load rate all bridges. So our first inspection happens as an initial inspection, and we're required to have.
The mayor is the owner of bridge.
On 8600.
Okay, yeah, we do an inspection prior to opening, any chance we can, or federally we're required within 3 months of the opening to do it, but we really do try to get out before a bridge opens to do that initial inspection, and then every 2 years.
I didn't want to keep up with. Yeah, right. That's.
Indicative for my group, but
She's the one that's protecting the safety.
That's what
of
you're
the
keeping it
citizens.
safe. Thank you for that.
we do those inspections as a safety thing first and foremost, so.
And where do I find this map you can purchase?
So
I'm on UDOT site, but I can't find it.
easy place to find it is you go to udot.utah.gov
Okay. And then-
/GO/bridge info, all one word. Were you looking for the Bridge Party on Program 1 or the general map?
I was looking at the general map and I was typed something wrong.
Also, if you just Google UDOT structures, the structures division page should come up first. And then if you scroll down on that, there will be a ribbon for bridge inventory dashboards and annual report.
How about I get you that?
I'll send that link over as well. I'll send the Bridge Party on Program link, this link, and the flyer for that National Bridge Preservation Partnership.
We'll get that, we can send it out.
Yeah.
Thank you. And just, you know, I'm not upset with UDOT for allowing that bridge open. Thank you for keeping it safe.
Thank you.
I'm more upset with whoever made it there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We had one in Riverhead that was built in 1935. It's on the program. It's really appreciated given the flows we have on 134.
Right.
It's a really great opportunity for us.
Thank you, Becky. Probably the first time you've been to a planning meeting.
I've been to quite a few. Thank you.
Probably once.
Oh, yeah.
You had the distinct opportunity, you know, a lot of us had this, to sit at the little table and respond to an audit of the legislature.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty well done.
Well, thank you. I'll just briefly and then share one of the recommendations made. UTA recently went through a legislative audit from the Office of the Legislative Auditor General, and it's a follow-up to one that we had in 2014, which probably wasn't quite as flattering and raised a lot of concerns. After about 9 months of them being in our facility and talking to national peers and others, came back with a fairly good audit, made some recommendations to us as an organization. Of the 14 or so, I think it was 14 issues raised initially, back in 2018 or 2014. We've addressed all but one, and the one is we're working on our strategic plan, and it just didn't have enough time for them to assess our progress on it because we recently adopted it a couple of years ago. The one place I would throw out, because I think it's really, and you can see our responses and their recommendations, and we can certainly provide that to you. The one place that that they made a recommendation, and I was reflecting on this a little bit, was for UTA working on local planning guidelines for local transit planning in communities. And when I took a job in 2013 as a department director for Solid County, one of the things I realized, because we began the conversations with the Transportation Land Use Connection Program with WFRC, is that many local communities didn't have a transportation plan or didn't have a recently transportation plan. Through that program and through other, including their own local funding, transportation plans have been generated. Very few of them have a transit component to it. And in some communities, it might be 2 paragraphs, and others it probably ought to be a section. But one of the things that have come out of recent conversations, even from adjoining communities, their vision of where their transit should be or be a line or corridor that doesn't fit a regional transportation plan is almost non-existent. Now we work and we do local planning, but we don't do the land use decisions around it and the proportion to it. So I think over the next few years, we're wanting to work with our MPO partners, UDOT, maybe helping to create some guidelines or some standards that local communities could look at and I think address. It would certainly help us as we update our long view plan about where communities foresee that going and where they're, hopefully ideally making their own land use decisions about corridors that could be supportive of transit. Anyway, long term, I'd love to see us work collaboratively because I don't think it's just a UDOT conversation. And so, that's one of the outcomes. The good news is they want more frequency and recommend more frequency. And we agree that's generally leads to higher use and more efficiency in transportation and the state's continued role in helping to fund large capital projects in regards to transportation funding. And we saw that in the last legislative session, primarily geared toward perimeter, but as we mentioned in our own long range plan, that system is a backbone to moving up along the Wasatch Front, general communities there. And so we obviously are working in close partnership with UDOT and supporting them in that because getting ultimately to 15-minute service on that system will be a game changer, I think, in transportation along the Wasatch Front and the higher use of transportation.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's probably a longer answer you're looking for.
No, it was great. I mean, I think this was a milestone, 2014 resulted in some structural changes. And I think that trust quotient was pretty low. And I would say that, this audit, I think, brought that trust level up quite a bit higher. And we're in a really good place right now with transit. So congratulations to the organization. Took a lot. It's a lot of work.
Well, and some great work from a couple of colleagues here that
That's something
that tolerate me. Yeah.
You guys make a great team. Any questions for Carl?
I did just want to ask about this a little bit. You did a great job assessing that, and really, I think, I don't know, you didn't really emphasize this, but 9 months that that our staff, everyone had those legislative auditors in place, and they really had an opportunity to do a deep dive. And they each spoke with us collectively and individually on down. And the opportunity, I think, as a result of that, is that there was actually, it was well received from leadership in the legislature at that committee hearing. And I think that the discussions moving forward I think really will be based on some of this. And so I can't say enough about how this really was very transformational for us.
In fact, that audit, to your point, one of the key conclusions, if you can summarize it, of the audit is transit is critical to Utah's future, to its mobility, to its economy, to its air quality, et cetera. That came out very clearly in the audit. And as you noted, Carlton, collaboration between local communities and transit and the MPOs to work together for transportation and land use planning together. That came out very clearly as an emphasis point as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's stay on the transit bandwagon and talk about a fresh look. Ted, are you doing this? Yes. Take it away. A fresh look.
It says I can't share my screen. Can I get screen sharing enabled or see that? Maybe I'll double check and make sure it's not my side.
Do we have to do that from this, Tyler?
No, if you didn't, you should be able to share. There you go. You got it. Cool. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so the Transit Fresh Look is the name for a really interesting process. I know it's a little bit of a cheesy name, but I've grown to love it. Really interesting process to look afresh, fresh look at transit possibilities in northwest Utah County and southwest Salt Lake County. Now, when you think of this area, it conjures up growth. This is perhaps the fastest growing part of not just our state, but one of the fastest areas in the United States. And that's a big part of the reason why there was a shared sense that, hey, we ought to take a new look at transit in this area. But in addition to that, there was a real clear sense that, hey, you know, development patterns have been unfolding differently than we all had thought. And there's been some substantive changes like a new frontrunner station just west of the point. And these kinds of things sort of brought to a head the fact that, you know, we ought to get together and take a new look. And I wanted to give you an overview, but I'll start with the main thing, which is what makes this project special is the partnerships. It's a very fantastic, deep and broad partnership of all the local governments on the left, UTA, UDOT, Mountain Land, WFRC, basically all of the regional transportation partners together. But then we have state legislators involved. We have the two counties involved, Salt Lake County, Utah County, school districts, private sector representatives. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes to just provide an overview. And then at the end of this, I'd like to, if I could, turn to Mayor Ramsey, who's the chair of WFRC, for comment, and also, of course, a mayor in the area, and then to Trustee Christensen, the chair of the Utah Transit Authority. And then I'll also just recognize that around the table, we have so many people that are engaged in this work. Trustee Acerson, Lenise with MAG, making sure I'm not missing, Trustee Holbrook, Mayor Burton. We had a council member, Perucci, here.
Said he was going to join on the phone.
Okay, fantastic.
He had a leave.
And so, you know, I would invite anybody else to be engaged in this. Andrea Olson, who's one of the key people with UDOT, who's engaged in the work. Alex Bain as well. So anyway, I only have 3 slides, so don't worry.
You can do a lot with 3 slides.
Well, and you'll think that after this one, Carlos.
We should have met Councilor Free. Anyway.
Someone wants to.
Oh.
That counts as one slide.
This does not count as one slide.
I try.
But I'll just highlight one thing about this approach. You know, a lot of times as transportation agencies, we take ideas that are put forward. It could be put forward by, you know, by a local government, or it could be put forward by who knows what, and we will evaluate it. And it's sort of like there's there's a proposer and an evaluator, and the transportation agencies are more evaluating. This is not that process. This is a process where the transportation agencies and the local governments and all of those partners are coming together to work on it as a unified team. And it's very unusual. We're going to ground truth our growth and development assumptions. We're going to take a new look at those. We're in the middle of that work. Hey, if one of the drivers has been a change in development, let's get our arms around where it is, where it's headed. Let's look at transit options that have not previously been considered. Now, this is an area, I'll back up and I'll just note, if you're not in this area, you don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, for this project, it might be an interesting project to look at just for the, uniqueness of the process. One of the things that we're doing is we're just going to kind of think about innovative approaches, ways that we can try to cost effectively meet the values and objectives of all of the partners by looking at options that haven't been previously considered. Now, I'll note that this process, it's focusing on regional transit connections. So you remember Alex's continuum of transit technologies, and on the left half, it was more about permanence. This is looking more on the left half of that kind of spectrum, but it doesn't do it at the exclusion of bus and other modes. And so I'll just highlight that. So we're working out a kind of an overall recipe that includes transit innovations. Remember that bill that came out just at the last session? That's a piece of the puzzle. Part of the piece of the puzzle is UTA long-range transit plan and service improvements. That's a part of the puzzle. And then this process will focus more on the regional connection side to round that out. We're going to evaluate options based on the values of the partnership. So now that includes, ways to look at the success of transit that are traditional. How many people will ride? How much does something cost? But it can and will look at other things that really matter to the local stakeholders. So even the way we evaluate our success will be a new way as well. It's too early for me to tell you what that is. The partners are going to look at that in detail in the next month. This is a key aspect of this. The Transit Fresh Look is taking a what would it take approach. So you can think of a traditional transportation analysis might be, let's look at an idea. Let's look at our criteria. Oh, it fails that criteria. Let me give you an example. It costs too much for the benefit. Sorry, it's not going to happen. Here, what we're going to do is we're going to say, what do we really want as a partnership to happen? Okay, let's identify the gap between where we're at. Maybe we need more revenue to get there. Maybe we need better, more transit-supported land use to get there. Rather than just saying, sorry, no, let's ask ourselves, what would it take? And then explore as a partnership. Are we interested in closing that gap? So that's a very unusual aspect of this, and one I think is going to be very fun to explore together. Let's go through the process. Let's explore scenarios. Let's see if we can coalesce behind one package and do what it takes to make that happen. And let's align together on a common vision. Alignment of that partnership, I think, is the key objective of the Transit Fresh Look. And then what we've been talking about as a partnership is, hey, let's not just celebrate success at the end of the development of our solution set. Let's keep the band together and go on tour. Okay, that's the wrong word. But I know it didn't work. Let's maintain the partnership with an eye towards implementing this as we move forward. Now, remember, the partnership includes state legislators, it includes local communities, it's transportation agencies, it's everybody but, say, perhaps the federal government, which I think will be engaging as well, that can help us get this done.
What would just one clarification. Actually, we have had representatives from members of Congress offices participate. And I think slash hope that we've had folks from our local FHWA office. I've been some folks on your team, and we welcome all of the partners participating.
2 more slides. This one, the next 2 way shorter. That was the longest slide. So the collaboration, we have a partnership, and that's really the ballgame. But I think this is going to lean heavily on technical parties as well, with each agency and with each local government. They're really key to that. And then you can imagine this kind of thing, it needs to reach out and engage with local governments with more depth. And so we'll be engaging local city councils as well in this process. We're early. This is a project that is about a 9-month effort, and we're going to conclude it with a shared blueprint in around spring of this year. So what we've done is we visited with each community together to talk about, well, what are your needs, issues, concerns. We've met together and had a kickoff where we've explored opportunities, challenges, goals. And just in July, we're going to establish our shared goals, the way we're going to evaluate success based on the values of the partnership. And we're going to start to look at the new opportunities for transit improvements in the area. So it's kind of a big brainstorming process. Then after July, into the fall, we'll start exploring these scenarios for how can we achieve the goals of the partnership? What are those processes and what would it take? With an eye towards in the spring establishing a blueprint and discussing implementation. So that's a relatively quick overview. Hopefully didn't feel too long. And would love to turn to Mayor Ramsey if you're available, and then of course fantastic. Councilmember Perucci.
Hey, thanks, Ted. I just wanted to really thank you, Andrew, everybody with Wasatch Front Regional Council, and everybody else for all of the work that you've done. This is it's something that I really appreciate. It's making a difference, and it's you brought a lot of us together for a conversation that's a long time coming, and I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks very much, Councilmember.
Make sure we get the right out.
Mayor Ramsey?
Yes, I am here. And apologies, this is the second Google Meets that I've done this week that for some reason my camera is not connecting, and I can see you, but I can't get mine on. So I'm not sure why, sorry. But I can see all of you. And yeah, thank you, Ted. Thank you for that. And Councilman Perucci. You know, this fresh look at transit, in my heart, my hope is that this is the last planning exercise, fresh look that we do for this region for some time, because hopefully we reach a consensus point. And Ted brought up so many good points about what the aim of this is. We'd like to come up with the right understanding, I think, of what is possible for this area. What is steps 1 through 10? What does 10 look like? And then how do we backtrack 98765 all the way back to get to the outcome, to get to an end goal? All of us, that includes land use planning, that includes partnerships, that includes funds, that includes bringing every partner together. There's a lot, we understand there's a lot to this. We know this is big. As our region has grown very fast, faster than I think a lot of people expected. If you've not been out here, I'd love to show you around. You're welcome no matter where you live in the state. Give me a call and come on out. I'd love to drive you around and show you what we have going on out here, because there's a lot that's gone out here, and there will continue to be a lot. And we understand that corridor preservation is important, and appreciate that we do still have corridor that's been preserved for future transit, and hope that we can hold on to that in this region. It's getting harder to hold on to, but hopefully we can. But that was pointed out earlier in this meeting, how important that is, and I agree. A lot of good people working together to do a heavy lift. But I am very optimistic and hopeful that because all of the partners at the table are willing partners to sit down and explore what does it look like and go through those steps that Ted pointed out, that we can get there and create a plan that is an implementable plan with realistic goals and outcomes that will help move people around better out here and help us raise the next generation of transit users. So thank you to everyone involved. I really am optimistic and grateful for everyone's involvement so far and in the future. So in advance, let me thank you, because it's never going to be easy, but I believe we will get there. I'm very confident that we'll all get there. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Carl?
Yeah, I was just reflecting back 10, 15 years ago, UTA built out what at the time was our regional plan for 2030. And in a window of time when construction costs were relatively low because we came out of the Great Recession and as a consequence incurred a lot of debt to be able to do that. And so much fun in the sense that there's still $2 billion worth of debt there to pay off. But the downside to that conversation is that in addition to putting some fiscal constraints, it left our vision limited to what we felt like we could get discretionary grants for from the federal government. And if a project didn't meet that standard, to Ted's earlier point, you set some parameters. If it didn't meet the parameters, then you didn't really continue the vision beyond that piece. And I don't think anybody would say that the system that we have in 2024 meets the needs today, let alone in 2030. And I don't think none of us ever imagined the level of growth that has taken place. I mean, we've surpassed most of the growth projections from 15, 20 years ago. And so, but that, having said that, those sort of artificial, well, some are real constraints. You have what many you have, but there are some artificial constraints of, at least on the visioning side, and saying if we could get to there one day, what would that be? And then you figure out what you pay for it. So I think we're optimistic that what comes out of this process is that vision part. There have been other investments in transit, including state investment in transit. I believe there's, we're running out of corridors to build freeways, and UDOT's busily, rightfully so, building out, the Mountain View corridors and the Bangerter interchanges and the things that you got to do sort of regardless. But, in 10 years, they'll hit the limit of what they can do there. And so how does the rest of the region continue to grow and not constrain the state as a whole? And so, it's not all centered on this one effort, but I think this highlights a critical need that's going to replicate itself up and down, not only the Wasatch Front, but if I were a commissioner in Juab County, for example, I would be worried, 15 years from now, what that looks like for them.
The mayors in Juab County are working.
Yeah, I think, or Box Elder, these are conversations that we want to start having now and thinking about how do we address it, and maybe using this model as a way to envision it without sort of artificially constraining ourselves to what the solution should be.
I wrote something on my whiteboard in my office to remind me how important it is. It says, don't let your vision be too small to meet the future. Because sometimes we restrain ourselves for lots of good reasons. We compromise for lots of good reasons, but we have to think big for the future. Did you have something you wanted to say?
I just wanted to, and Carlton and I had an opportunity to actually tour. Mayor Ramsey had mentioned touring their area, and we had that opportunity, a week ago, to really go out and look at that development. And I know that Jeff has done that in respects to Northwest Utah County. And I do think that eyeballs on it is really helpful. I think that having this ability to have these conversations with all the partners, I think, is really a new model. So
thank you.
I just wanted to acknowledge Lauren Victor also with our staff who at WFRC, who's our day-to-day project manager on this. Just wanted to recognize her. So
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Lauren. Lauren has been doing heavy lifting on this, so.
And you're taking all the credit for this, like, I'm going to ask, we have 3 more agenda items. We have 15 minutes. And so Tiffany, can you give us a brief update on the items that came out of the commission workshop? And then we're going to have ask Kristen Houshire here to talk about our zero fatalities program, which I think is something I hope every mayor is aware of, every commissioner is aware of. We think that's a really big deal. I'm asking Tiffany probably to take it, and she has to schedule 15, 20 minutes.
I think she only has 3 slides.
$1 billion a minute.
I actually took the opposite approach as Ted, and I tried to put as much content onto each slide as possible. And just data overload. And I'm gonna abbreviate this and go as quickly as possible, but for those who are interested, all of this content is on our Transportation Commission Programming Workshop website. There's a full recording there, so if anything is of interest, and we don't get the time to talk about it today, call me or call Ivan, and we'd be happy to talk more about it. But each year, UDOT goes through what's called our programming workshops, where we look at our existing infrastructure, so our bridges, like Becky was talking about, our signals, our existing roadways, and look at what state of repair they're in, good, or and what buckets of money we want to use to preserve our existing assets. And then we have other funding types that look at adding capacity, not just to freeways, but to transit. And if we have a new trails program, we also have the first mile, last mile program. And so each year we go through this programming process where we look at different types of programs and funding opportunities we have and forecast them out between 3 to 5 years. This is what I meant by just data overload. I'm not going to really walk through this, but we get federal funds, we get state funds, and then we also provide locals with a percentage of that, and then look at what money we have left, what infrastructure can we kind of take care of. Oh, thank you. Yes. This is just a map of, throughout our workshop, all of the assets that we are looking forward to doing some level of maintenance on in the construction season.
This is just 1 year.
No, this is between, we're looking at current year all the way to 2027.
So this is all in the statewide transportation.
It looked like just this year.
It's about what, 900 plus projects?
I have a table in here that I can skip forward on the total number of projects. Sorry. Into our different types of, so you'll see, Becky's line items, structures. We have TIF is our highway capacity fund. TTIF is our transit capacity program. We have the new ATIF, which Josh will tell me is ATN. I skipped a bunch of information, but the asset management programs were recently approved, and so we look forward to the STIP that Carlos mentioned. Our legislative body this year also provided a pretty healthy amount towards adding capacity as well to some of our core routes, because that's some freeways and other existing corridors that also needed some capacity additions. This is the active transportation fund, where we were able to add a couple of projects and funding to that. These are the different types of capacity programs that we have to program each year. This is the transit capacity program that we added some projects to. We also have also in the transit program, the first mile, last mile, nomination based.
These are communities nominating projects.
And the new ATIC where some of you might have seen some of the news come out about the list of projects that we were able to program recently. Summary, these are the projects that we have look forward to building. Okay.
So it's very complicated and there's a lot of information there, but if anyone would like to sit down and go through the development of how we come up with this.
Do you feel like you have the contractors? And I only ask that because it's hard to get.
It's, you know, we're seeing just through the numbers of bids we receive on when we put projects out to bid, we're seeing fewer contractors bidding on jobs. So we're seeing less competition. And there's, you know, there's a lot of private work going on as well.
Yeah.
And so it's an interesting time. Like, one of the things we're consciously doing, and I've had this conversation with the president and speaker over the last 5 years, you haven't seen the state bonding for projects or for programs. And that's intentional because what, you know, when you bond, you get this spike of sugar rush, but then you have to pay it off. And if you're a contractor and you're thinking, I want to grow or move we want to move more resources into the state, and you see this, you don't have any confidence in it. And so what you're seeing is our program is growing. So right now, just one of our programs, the Transportation Investment Fund, was about $1 billion a year. It's now grown to about $1.3 billion for the capacity. And so we believe that we can show steady, consistent growth in the program. It will give confidence to the industry to grow because we need more consultant capacity. We need more contractor capacity. And quite frankly, we need more UDOT capacity. Our folks are stressed like I've never seen. It's a great problem to have. Yeah. Thank you, Tiffany. So 280. What does that number represent?
Last year.
Last year, thank you, Mayor. As of Monday, that number was 85 for this year. So we're below last year at this point in time, but it's just way too much. And Utah was, we believe, the first, if not one of the first to start with this program called Zero Fatalities. You hear a lot, federal government has kind of picked up on it. They call Vision Zero or Towards Zero. And it's been picked up as on a national scale as well. We've been at this now since the early 2000s. And one of the things we're really proud of is this focus on trying to get in and talk to our new drivers. I have no idea what Kristen's going to talk about, but let me introduce you to our program coordinator, somebody who cares deeply about this. Kristen, I'm sure. And if you could try to do this in 5 minutes.
Totally. Okay, so as Carlos said, I'm Kristen Hoschauer with UDOT, and I work with a number of organizations for zero fatalities, mostly with DPS, health departments, and many other organizations, cities, and locations to talk about behavior, like the wheel, driving behavior. So we do a lot of engineering at UDOT, but this is more behavioral side. And so you can see here, these are the 5 behaviors that we want people to have behind the wheel. And so this is kind of the report card that we're at right now. Is it not moving?
No, you're not. Brian's going to give us 10.
I've learned from painful experience that it has to almost be a presentation before you.
Okay. I'm in presentation, but I don't know how long.
Myra?
Really briefly, while she's loading that up, I might mention that in, ACMPO in St. George, we had a $1 million grant, for Safe Streets for All program. And we've gone in there and we've done a deep dive into the data. And we discovered something very interesting. 24% of all serious and fatal accidents in the last 10 years involved a teenage driver. The engineering response to that is, well, you can't fix stupid. But we asked why. Why are these teenagers involved in so many of the crashes? We discovered that disconnect that each one of us could influence. That disconnect is that the driver ed program that the school districts used to run are no longer being run. The state of Utah is depending solely on parents to teach their children to drive. The problem with that is that the parents are not aware of that. And so they're not doing the job they expect.
And that's why we've been doing this program.
And so, you know, as a lead into your presentation, I would just like to share that there are things that we can do from a legislative perspective that could potentially fix that.
That's great, thanks.
Apparently, that's a comment. Oh,
Okay, so this is the report card where we're at right now. You can see here that we're actually at the 93 fatalities this year, and last year at this time we're 107. So we're actually doing better, but this represents human lives. So of course we want 0. So, and this is where we're at this summer so far. Actually, we're at 8 instead of 7, but you can see here in 2020, 2021, we're the worst. Coming out of the pandemic, people were not driving as well as they should. And we're starting to get back down to what we were pre-pandemic. So we're hoping to have a good summer this year. And so far, I've been doing pretty good, so I can't talk too much because then I'll jinx it. I always feel like if I say.
Chris, could you just go back one slide, like just.
This is summer.
I understand. In 2019, that was pre-pandemic, right? Summer, it was 61, such a low year. Is there a?
2019 was our lowest
That was
number.
249, I think was our total that year.
It was the lowest we've had
I think it
in
was 249.
many years. 2019 was an
And
amazing.
that was a trend. We were on this trend since like 2013, going down and down.
And we actually had a goal of getting below 200 fatalities. So, and we're shooting for that goal again. We, well,
I set that target because the last time we were there was the year I was born, 1958.
it's hard to say what caused that. It may be people's mental state during the pandemic and leading out of it. There were a lot of things that were making people maybe aggressive. We saw a lot of speeding and aggressive driving. And we're continuing to see more of that. And we actually have a campaign this summer that focuses on aggressive driving. But going back to the presentation, so we've had 381 presentations to driver ed students. And we actually worked so well with the Board of Education that they have made it a requirement that any student who attends public driver ed and wants to graduate and get their driver license needs to attend our parent night or a parent night, not necessarily ours. So we are in 99% of high schools right now. And we do online presentations and we do in person. We do encourage parents and teens to attend in person. I feel like they get a lot more out of it. And if they do online, we have to see that their parent is with them, or otherwise we'll kick them off the presentation. And so we have an agreement that we make them go through, and they agree that, you know, if you follow these rules, then you get this. If you don't, this is what happens. And we make sure that parents, like leading employee, you were saying that they are really involved, that they're getting, that the drivers are getting their 40 hours in, that they're following the graduated driver license law. That's a big one in order to decrease the number of fatalities for teens, which are the most inexperienced drivers, and they do cause. We found that teen drivers and those in their 20s and early 30s are causing the majority of our crashes in Utah. For drivers are. They're inexperienced. They're more likely to do risky behaviors.
They don't appreciate those.
So yeah, so more education.
And
we can
often
give
they
them.
don't understand what the lines on the road and what the signs, it's sad, that's true.
So, and we also have a Truck Smart program where we go into the driver ed classes and we teach them about driving around large trucks. We have a lot of large trucks in the state of Utah, so we want to educate them about that. We also have virtual if we can't bring a truck in. We have a partnership with the Utah Trucking Association. They will bring in a truck, and if they can't, we'll do virtual. We also have middle school pre-driver presentation where we go into 8th and 9th grade classes and teach them about, reminding them about buckling up, getting them ready to get their learner permit, what they should be doing, how to be safe pedestrians, everything that's leading up to getting their driver's license. And then another program that we have at UDOT is Safe Routes Utah. And this is a really fun program where we go to elementary schools and we get an assembly. We have 2 different assemblies, one for 1st through 3rd, one through 4th to 6th grade. You see Fortnite, when we pull up that Fortnite presentation for 4th through 6th graders, they just go crazy. And it is a lot of fun. And they learn all about walking to and from school safely and encouraging them to do it. We have a walk and roll challenge where we encourage them to walk to school. They can win prizes. They're entered to win prizes the more times that they enter to walk to school. And so it's really fun. And if your schools in your community want these, if you go to saferoutes.utah.gov, you can enter your name or your school and get the assembly to come, and they just learn a lot about how to safely navigate the roads. You can see here our programs are growing a lot. You can see in 2020 and 2021 they dipped a bunch because it wasn't school, and they just didn't want to bring a lot of people together. You can see here we're just continuing to grow, and every year our programs just continue to grow even more. Our Beat the Streets assembly, which is the Safe Routes assembly, our pre-driver assembly. We do business presentations. So if you know businesses who want us to come about, talk about the 5 behaviors about getting your business to be, making sure that everyone who drives is wearing their seatbelt, that there's, a policy that you have no phones when you're driving, stuff like that. We will talk about all about that. And we want that. We want more adults to hear what we're saying, not just teenagers, about what we're doing. And then we have community events where we go out to safety fairs or demolition derbies and present to people and talk to them. That's a regional workshop. So if your region wants us to do a workshop with you, we will bring in data. We'll show you what are the leading causes of crashes in your community? What is causing crashes? Who is doing it? We'll bring the data and we'll bring together all those that are related to traffic safety. So, we'll need help gathering the people. So local law enforcement, HB, our regional engineers, your local engineers, bring everyone together. We've done this with UDOT County. We've done this we worked just recently with Cache County. What was it? I think we've done Sevier County, and this year we're planning on doing one in Tooele County. So if there are other communities that you know of that want to do this and find out what you can do to reduce fatalities in your communities, let us know, and we will help you put that together. We'll provide lunch. We'll provide a personal story of someone who's been in a crash from your community. We have a lot of those. So we work a lot with the public. Now I'm moving fast here. So Back to Basics is our biggest campaign right now, and it's really fun, where we create videos and we post them on social media about basics, basically, like just how to go around a roundabout if you're a bicyclist, how, if as a pedestrian, how to navigate a roundabout too, or if you're a driver, what's the safest way to navigate a roundabout. So we just really basic videos that maybe people don't understand, or they've never learned, or they've forgotten since driver ed. And this has been hugely popular. So you can see here some of these. I'm not going to go through all these, like a passing lane. The left lane is not a passing lane. And so we have all these on social media. I'm going to try and see. Sorry, they're all running at the same time. Hopefully we get it done.
Try to change this.
Okay, anyways, there you go. I'm gonna move on to the next slide. Okay, and so we have pedestrian safety ones too. Look left, look right for pedestrians and drivers. If you're a driver, make sure you're looking for pedestrians when you come up to an intersection. We have ones on crosswalks and unmarked and marked crosswalks, reminding people that if you come to an intersection and there isn't a marked crosswalk, it's still a crosswalk, and pedestrians do have the right of way. So we're reminding people about that. And we've got roundabouts. I'm gonna go. And these are all, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Yeah. These are some of the comments we've seen on social media. We've done, this is just last summer. So this is last summer. We did 19 driver related, 17 pedestrian related, and 17 bicycle related reels on Instagram and Facebook about this. Some of our partners, Utah Highway Patrol, of course, Bike Utah, they came in and showed us how do you get your bike ready for the earth? What stuff should you be wearing? What should you be doing to be safe? So we've partnered with a lot of these different people, driver ed teachers, health departments, local PDs and counties, sheriff offices, to create these reels. And that is all. There's a lot more.
And there's a ton here. Any of your communities, any of your cities would like to have, us come and help. We would love to do that. And as Myra mentioned, the data is really important. We every year publish the data on the causes of all crashes, so you can slice it by time of day, you can slice it by age of drivers, you can look at it by county, you can look at it by route. We have all that information. We publish that annually in our zero fatalities report that we do. So that information is all available to you, and it's on our website. So let's Commissioner.
Good. Do you keep track also of non-fatality? Yes. So in other words, yes, you put your up there where it shows the amount of injury crashes. Yes. Each year.
Yes. We and again, there's a standard form in the country of what law enforcement, when they come to a crash, they're required to go through this standard form to try to identify the causes of those crashes and to characterize that crash, so that then the data is available when you do the analysis on it. There's about 60,000 crashes a year in the state. But we do track those different levels of injury crashes, serious injury crashes, fatalities. We have all that. Let's do Lindsay and Beth.
I just have to say this. I have a 23-year-old daughter who follows regularly UDOT's social media and communication pages. And when you have a 23-year-old who's following your social media, it's working. So your game on social media communication is outstanding. Yeah, anecdotally for my 23-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the stuff I see, I'm like, oh, that's a little kind of edgy. And I'm like, no, this is what we need to do to reach our audience. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing all this.
I just have a question, and I recognize this is a gray line, but what about road rage?
That data, you had two really high profile cases.
Yeah, I mean, that's, so there's different, like you could say, one of the characteristics drive calm. So the negative of that is that aggressive driving. That would be where that would be accounted for, is under those counts under aggressive driving, when the officer is going to go and check wrong. But this seems above and beyond. Aggressive driving is usually speeding, tailgating, cutting people off, swerving.
Right.
This is a new. We're seeing a new reality, I think, right now of poor behavior. Yeah, Alan.
Yeah, this is a great component of it, the education and behavioral, but would you be able to speak a little bit about the other components of like safe systems approach, like what's being done in terms of engineering and like having roads? We have a lot of wide, flat, straight roads that I've heard people talk about. That's great. Or you see cars just like zipping down because it's almost like it's designed like a drag race. So what are we doing?
We talked about
engineering.
We're talking about the ease of safety. So you've got the engineering approach. So every project we do has got a safety component. It's a safety project. We do using all that data anytime there's any kind of a project. Overlay, a simple project. We pull the operational safety reports, the OSRs. Those OSRs go to the engineers that look to see how they can incorporate items, engineering items, to be able to address the safety issues there based on the data. There's the enforcement piece, there's the emergency response piece, and there's the education piece. And we like to throw another E in there, say it to everybody. You know, we all should be responsible when we're out on the road.
Does vehicle neglect have, since we lost the inspection program?
You know, that's a great question. When that came up during the session, we like to speak from data. There was 20, at the time, there was 22 states that had a vehicle inspection. Utah being one of them. We could not find any data to correlate safety numbers with vehicle inspection. Now, intuitively, I believe there has to be there. You know, people are operating on both tires, or if people are, you know, their turn signals don't work. I think there's a safety implication. There just hasn't been the way to gather that data on a consistent basis to make that correlate. But I believe that entire vehicle safety piece is not, because we don't have data on it nationwide, it makes it difficult to justify it to our policymakers. Wow. Yeah, we could not fight that issue when it came up with data.
Myron mentioned the comprehensive safety action plans that we've developed in several of our regions. This is funded through the Safe Streets Rural federal program that came out of the IIJA. Those are aimed at local governments principally, and really importantly, they have within those safety action plans specific examples of projects that could be done at the local level. This is back to Alex's point about design to enhance roadway safety. So it sort of helps walk our community to, here are the projects that could be done. And then there are also federal funds available to do the construction related to those projects. So it's, and in case you're worrying, identifying a particular project that would enhance safety, there's actually a liability carve out in federal law that just by acknowledging it, you don't risk having liability for it, but just as a complement to all the great work that Kristen and the team are doing around behavior. And to Alex's point, the design of our systems is really important. And like Myron said, these comprehensive safety action plans identify specific safety projects that could be implemented at the local level.
We're at time. I don't want to cut anyone off with a question. I'm going to eliminate, or I'm going to postpone the grants report. If that's okay, that we had. And I'd love for anyone who wants to walk 2 minutes across here to have a tour of our traffic operations center. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll be surprised. Yes, we do time traffic signals in the state.
Oh, sure.
No way. But I hit a red light. How is that possible?
So anyone who's interested, we can just walk across right now. You can leave your stuff. I've already taken care of it. Tyler, leave your stuff here for half an hour, or we have the room today. So your stuff is taken care.
Oh, did you?